as I told you last time I presented, I've been working on the history of the railroads in North America and some of the different aspects. And obviously Chicago, the trains are running all over the place with other people's track on other people's tracks. But I looked at Minneapolis and St. Paul because of the two cities. It's fairly complicated here, and so I started to get into each one, how each of the railroads got from one city to the other. And so that'd be interesting to look at that. This is a map of the Twin City terminals. So here's the Sioux line. Here's the Northern Pacific. That's orange,
Yep.
and the NP came over here, and then the Great Northern is blue, and then the Milwaukee is red. And those are really the four railroads that own track. Everybody else ran on these railroads. And so what I'm going to try to do is go through the major railroads that had facilities in St. Paul first, go through each one, and then Minneapolis. Okay, so now we'll look at some of the short lines. Minnesota Transfer, the Minneapolis Eastern, Minneapolis Western, Minneapolis Northfield and Southern, and the Minnesota Western.
Okay.
All right, I think we're all familiar with the Minnesota Transfer. This was actually started by Jim Hill, and they had a big yard, as I said, between the Milwaukee and the Great Northern up here. And then they wandered up into through New Brighton. Now here's the original map. New Brighton has the stockyard days because they used to have the stockyard right in this area. And Jim Hill built this because, of course, with cattle and animals, you got to keep them moving. And so rather than bring the stock cars down into the cities and switch them around and everything, he just had the trains come right on in. They came right off the NP and the Great Northern, came right in here to New Brighton. So it saved them a lot of time. But I've got to believe one of the reasons this, because the wind is mostly north and northwest. So the people in St. Paul and Minneapolis with a stockyard up here, they probably protested at some point. Um, I got a story to tell. If you guys know Gary Kraus, he used to be a tower operator at Division Street. He was working for the Burlington, and we were sitting there one. He was quite a jokester, and he one particular night it was a gentle south wind, and this is Division Street in St. Paul, and he goes, well, he kind of laughed and he said, Los Angeles has got smog. Here we have Smith, you know. So anyway, but you can imagine the odors were pretty good for most of the city because predominant winds are north and northwest. Um, this is a that's from the internet. These are pictures of the Alcos that were on the Minnesota transfer. Then they sold all those and they bought I think 6 SW1500s later on. And of course, the Minnesota transfer was owned. Each railroad that was there owned one share. That's the way Jim Hill did it. And here's the big yard at Raymond Avenue. So that's the Minnesota transfer. Now this is the Minneapolis Western, which Jim Hill built. It parallels the Stone Arch Bridge, but that had so many passenger trains on it that they couldn't run freight. And so they had to transfer a lot of grain cars between the east bank and the west bank of the river. So this is right next to the Stone Arch Bridge, but you can see a whole run of cars going across there, and they call it Minneapolis Western, because of course Minneapolis was on the St. Anthony was on the right. But anyway, and it sits. Here's the stone arch up top, and then you can this right there, and then the Minneapolis Western Bridge was right there. So this kind of shows the whole plant here for the depot, and then the NP had a yard here. Hole in the wall is this little thing right here, and this is the NP main line. Oops, sorry. Coming out, going up like that, and the Sioux line also used it. Here's the Burlington coach yard is over here, and Minneapolis Junction is over here. So the Great Northern Main is kind of running through like this. And so here's the piers for the Minneapolis Western Bridge were right were right here, and they took it out when they built this lower dam for hydropower. So here's a train coming in on the Minneapolis north of the depot, and here's the Dolly, one of the Dolly sisters with the GP9. He's coming down the NP, going to go through hole in the wall. And so this is the Great Northern Main is right here, and he's coming through hole in the wall, and this is the way the NP also went. And now he goes around the corner on the Minneapolis Eastern. And here's a picture I took of a GP30 pulling a transfer run in the late 60s. And he's going around, and then he goes up between the depot and the Great Western freight terminal, and that's this view right here. And then he comes, as we saw, he comes along the post office, and then turns the corner right up at the top, and then they go along all those elevators, and then the Milwaukee depot is right to the left, and then this is at the throat of the railway transfer yard, and here's the railway transfer yard. So, and that was a lot of the Sioux line and some of the other railroads transferred in and out of there. So here's a transfer run coming in, and he goes through, and then he's long, so he has to double it, and he's going out on bridge number 9, which was the Northern Pacific Bridge. Okay, well, go over the Minneapolis Northfield and Southern. This is in purple. And they transferred to Union Yard, to Northtown, all over the place. And Greg, I guess, is going to give a talk on this, so I won't go over it too much. And their big yard was at Glenwood, and then, of course, they bought the Minnesota Western. So I'll kind of skip through these because Greg is going to talk about it. So now we'll talk about some key junctions. Obviously St. Paul Union Depot is a key junction. St. Anthony Tower, there's a lot of railroads there. 18th Avenue Southeast is a Northern Pacific Tower, and that is kind of a sleeper. It's sort of hidden in there, but there's a lot of there used to be a lot of traffic through that area. And then of course Minneapolis. Now the original St. Paul Union Depot was this building, but they outgrew that quite quickly. And then of course they built the current one. And I got to give Art Pugh, rest his soul, credit because I used to be on the board of the Minnesota Transportation Museum, and he used to talk about, having the St. Paul Union Depot reopened, and he also wanted to build a trolley line from St. Paul Union Depot up to MTM, but that didn't happen. But I got to give him credit. He pushed that thing, and he got the ICE-T grant, and they rebuilt the depot. I'm really glad they did because that's a neat building. So here's kind of a picture of the trackage. Here's the depot here, and so this is the plant for the St. Paul Union Depot. This is the Milwaukee and the Burlington. This is the NP Scally line. This is the Great Northern. This is the Sioux line. This is the Great Northern here, and this is the NP going out like that. And this is a picture from probably about the 50s, and this is the east side of the depot, the east throat, and this is the old yard. This is all the yard that Milwaukee had originally before they built the big hump yard in 1957. Here's the east throat, and they just had. If you've seen some of the films that some of the guys, Jim Slocum and some of those guys shot, with these guys running around throwing all these switches manually with all these passenger trains coming in and out of there, they had to be good because boy, you wouldn't survive. This is the west throat of the yard, and so these two tracks are the Milwaukee here, and this is the Great Northern transfer that's probably going to Western Avenue, I would guess. And this line here coming diagonally, that's a freight track that's going across the. This track going out here is going across that Chicago Great Western Lift Bridge. And so the Great Western passenger trains would go through the puzzle switch here and go out this way. The freight trains would go through the back of the depot and then come out this way. Here's a picture from probably the late 50s, or because they were still trying to keep their trucks silver, which didn't last too long. I took this in '68 after they'd gone to the new paint scheme. And this is the last time I got on the Hiawatha in St. Paul, 1969. There's a Main Streeter coming in. This is Mississippi Street Tower. Greg, is this one of your shots, right? Oh, you're muted, Greg. You're muted.
Can you
Oh,
hear us at all?
no, Greg is muted.
All right. You've been having trouble all night hearing all of us out here, so
Oh, I can hear you fine now.
good.
Okay.
What was
Okay.
the question? Maybe somebody here has an answer about that tower. What were you wondering about this tower?
Uh, when the picture was taken, it must have been about 1970. I didn't realize the tower was still there. Anyway,
Consensus here?
okay. Well, Greg's muted, but anyway, the
Yeah, it's a
the
seven.
Great Northern has these two. We're right north of the St. Paul Union Depot here, and the Great Northern um, tracks head around here this corner, and that's Westminster, and then these two tracks are the Northern Pacific, and then the Northwestern goes across the top, so that's Westminster, and here's the tower there, and that's sat right here. So it's Northwestern, um, Great Northern, and NP right there. And this train's uh, coming up the hill, ready to go west on the Great Northern. So it's looking south. These are the NP tracks down here. That's a much better grade. This is a pretty steep grade here, the GN head. And this is Trout Brook Junction. The Sioux line comes in here from the north and gets on the NP tracks here, and then that's how they got down to the depot. Now this this is on the Scally line, and this is a 13,000 ton ore train. They used to run, maybe they still do, all rail ore trains to East St. Louis. And so this guy's coming down the hill, and of course the brakes are squealing and everything. He gets out of the cab and he runs ahead to throw a switch. He was running like crazy because I don't think they could get the train stopped, but he made it. So, um, and so that's right here, right in this area. This is the Scally line. Oops, there we go. This is on the west side of the depot, and that's a transfer run coming from Western Avenue on the Northwestern. I took this in 1970s, right after the merger, when they started running coal trains down to Commonwealth Edison, Montana Coal. And so they'd run four NP U-28s, 25s, and the red cars back here, those are all Great Northern. The black cars are NP, and then the ones with the big white symbol, those are painted BN or brand new BN cars. And here's see, this would be evening. So I'm trying to think what this is before Amtrak. It's what would be coming in from Minneapolis in the evening into St. Paul. I don't know. Anyway, and here's a Hiawatha coming in. These are 1970. Now the next tower we're going to talk about is well, we talked about St. Anthony. That I took those pictures like of the North Coast and some of those, and the NP Bridge was up here. But now, so the passenger main comes through here. This is by Union Yard, and then East Minneapolis Yard for the Northwestern, and then the passenger main, the Great Northern passenger main, goes through the campus like this. Oops, sorry. Um, Through the campus like this, and this is bridge number 9, and you can see that the Northern Pacific used to go right through the campus like this. They just built because when they were when they were building this thing, the NP or excuse me, the University of Minnesota only had a few buildings here, so the NP built straight across here. You can see how the track goes like this. They just built straight across here. Well, then pretty soon they were building buildings here, and that's how they got the smoke into the buildings. And so the university said you got to move it. So they built bridge number 9, and then this is the NP tracks follow along here like this, and then they go over like this, and so they still have a line that goes through there. Um, And so the Great Northern Passenger Main's like this. This is and the this is the NP Tower, 18th Avenue Southeast. And because the Great Western, when they came in, they built this 2,200 car yard here. It's a huge yard. I never realized it was there because it's kind of tucked in by the grain elevators. But they would haul full size trains up to Minneapolis because, of course, you want to haul trains on your own track as far as you can, or your own locomotives and crews. And so they would big full size trains up here, double them over, and then they would pull down here like this, and they would transfer to the Milwaukee here, and they would transfer to the Great Northern. They'd have to cut across the um, um, the passenger main here. There used to be a tower. Greg Smith has a picture of the tower at 15th Avenue Southeast. It sat right over in this area someplace, right in here. And because they'd have to sit here and wait, and then they'd shove back into the yard like this, but it was constant traffic. And so here's St. Anthony, and the track has been moved here about. Here's the tower here. It's been moved about 4 times, but the passenger mains went straight on through here, and then the NorthWestern would come out of their yard, and then they'd get on the freight. So he's not going on the freight main here, and right below here, that's the Minnesota Transfer. But here's the trackage at 18th Avenue Southeast. This is Milwaukee going this way. Here's the NP had 2 tracks here. Now the track has been modified since they no longer run passenger trains, but these were NP tracks. This is that big Chicago Great Western yard, and so this guy was really busy back in the day. Now this is the tower, and we went up in the tower after it was closed down, and it was quite a board, and it was quite a busy place because you had all these different railroads and constant transfer runs between the different railroads. And then here's this. Greg has a picture of this 15th Avenue Southeast tower that was right here, and this is where the Great Western would pull transfer yard cars to the Great Northern down here, and then they had to shove across the passenger main. So they had to get clearance to cross this high speed main here, and so they'd shove over here, and then the Great Northern would shove this way, and sometimes the NP would come through here, and it was a busy place. And here's the Milwaukee was switching their little yard there and getting cars, and here's the yard later on. It's Trackage is looking a little sorry.